Welcome, everyone. We are joined here by a number of expert speakers for this official calendar event for the 2026 Year of Quantum Security. This webinar speaks to a critical gap in artificial intelligence deployment, the vulnerability around AI inference. So whether it's adversarial attacks or harvest now, decrypt later types of tactics. The platform is being hosted by the Quantum Insider with our also hosts O1 Quantum. So we can demonstrate to you how organizations are attempting to maintain digital trust and reduce compliance risk. The discussion today here focuses on the practical application of post-quantum cryptography or PQC standards to existing AI expert systems, including learning how to defend against espionage and ensure the privacy of user prompts without the need for total infrastructure overhauls or vendor lock-in. Let me introduce our assembled experts today. First of all, Kristin Milchanowski, who is the Chief AI and Data Officer at Bank of Montreal Financial Group. She brings the enterprise banking perspective on AI governance and quantum readiness at scale. We also today have Tyson Macaulay, who is a board member and COO of O1 Quantum. He brings 25 plus years of network and IoT security leadership spanning Intel, BAE, and BAE Systems and Fortinet. Finally, with us today is Subin Alexander, who is the Director of Consulting Delivery at CGI. He brings hands-on experience in Microsoft security, identity, modernization, and the security operational readiness of adopting PQC standards. I'm Brian Lenahan, the chair of the Quantum Strategy Institute, and I'll be your moderator for today's panel. Just a few administrative items. During the session, we have over 400 participants today. We'll be here for the next 55 minutes, and we'll conduct polls throughout the session, and we'll have live Q&A with responses to your questions, and there's an opportunity for you in the chat. So welcome, everybody, and let's get started. So I'm going to start here with Tyson. Tyson, maybe you can define for us what AI inference is, and maybe talk about a little bit about that invisible threat landscape.
Sure, thanks, Brian. Inference is actually AI working. It's the working part of AI, and it's distinct from where a lot of the energy and power is spent, which is in the training side, in ingesting data and creating a model. Inference is asking questions against a model. And the nature of the model, these inference models, is that they often reflect the distilled essence of the organization's intellectual property or the training data set that was used to generate them in the first place. So there's a lot of value in inference, and often inference, particularly with expert systems, which is where most of the growth is, this makes it a target because of the intellectual property in there, and also the fact that these models can, in some cases, be reversed to actually gain insights into the training data that was, in fact, used to create them. The other important thing to know about inference is that when you ask it questions, the questions reveal something about the questioner. It could be personal information against an expert medical system, for instance, and the person who owns that information is certainly a stakeholder and aware of the value of their own personal information. And of course, it's a widely regulated sort of issue. But at the same time, when a business or another application asks an expert system a question, and the question itself reveals something about the state of the questioner, or in some cases, it could actually reflect more intellectual property being input into this inference model. So the prompts, as they're called, are in some cases just as sensitive as the models themselves. And ultimately, if you look at the the standards around AI security, such as they exist now, from the National Institute of Standards and Technology or from the ISO, about half of their recommendations and discussion actually revolves around this question of prompt and inference model security. So it's a high profile issue in the emerging world of AI.
Thank you. Subin, in your extensive portfolio of clients, um, do CISOs or CTOs see this challenge today?
Absolutely. The biggest problem is responsible usage of AI, right? The adoption of the right policies and the regulatory requirements that are currently in place. Many organizations are struggling to meet the standards followed in North America in itself, right? So Bill 194, as an example, it's still in place, and organizations have started slowly and gradually moving in that direction. The AI adoption in itself is a big thing, but how do you discover what is being used, the agentic capabilities being used within your organization, and how can you protect your organization from anything turning rogue, right? Those are the bigger concerns that I'm seeing more and more organizations deal with. The shadow AI ability that we are seeing quite a bit within organizations. So the visibility factor is a bigger concern. And then how do you protect your end users so that you don't lose your intellectual property, anything that is critical to your organization? Those are the kind of concerns that we hear every day for while we speak to the C-levels within organizations. They are working towards setting in guardrails, but it's at really initial stages. Most organizations are in the pilot stage, finding capabilities that can help them protect their sensitive information. Right.
Fantastic. So, Kristin, it's probably no surprise to anybody that a financial organization is on this type of call, but I don't want to make any assumptions. Why is this important to you and your organization?
Thanks, Brian, and really excited to be here today. Truly standing on shoulders of giants by having you, Brian, and the panelists. So thank you for that. And I hope everybody's read your book, because it was a really great collection that you put together with Kenna. But yeah, from a financial institution perspective, it's vital. So we are one of the heaviest regulated institutions in the world. The banking center is, and so we have to instill confidence in everything that we do. So when people are looking for best practices when it comes to cyber controls and privacy controls, it's really, really great to look at what is the banking sector doing. And so typically that's why you would find someone like myself on these type of calls, is because the financial sector has to be ahead of this game because we are so heavily regulated. So we do already have very strict privacy, consumer protection, and data handling rules and controls. Those have to be adhered to not only by our internal development team, but also by any of the vendors who want to participate with us. And we are concerned about prompt privacy. There's as the Tyson and Subin have mentioned, there is quite a bit of concern about IP leakage in that area. Model extraction is doable. That is something that we try to protect through our third-party risk measures. And then we have an established responsibility framework. It's one of the first in the financial sector to be launched. It'll be in our sustainability report coming soon. But these are principles that govern how do we develop. And this is going to be a leadership comment and not a technical one. But really, we've made an active decision to lead our innovation with empathy. And what that means is that as we design our controls and as we design and develop our agents and all of our other AI systems, we're doing it with our clients in mind, with our teammates in mind, really getting down to the empathy of what are we trying to achieve, and making sure that we hold true to our value statement as a company. Because when we do that, we end up with a superior product at the end of the day that has controlled for bias issues, et cetera. So that's something that is in our statement of responsible AI is to lead with empathy.
That's great. And Subin and Tyson, I'm going to come back to you next, talking a little bit about who are these adversarial threats that we have in our title. But just briefly, Kristin, your role is such a senior role. Why did the bank put that role in place when you think about chief AI and chief data officer?
The perspective of why they put it in place and why it is sitting in the C-suite at BMO is because we need to drive a transformation for the sector. So this isn't something that we're just doing for our own selves, but we do believe that this is a leadership position that needs to drive change across the sector. We need to drive revenue. So it's an OpEx, CapEx exercise that we're after. And anytime that you do a wholesale change, it's a transformation. It's a cultural transformation. And this is a board level topic that we take really seriously. And so the position meets the moment that we're all in.
Fantastic. Thank you. Subin, we now know that there is a AI inference challenge. But what are those adversarial threats that we were talking about before we start really talking about solutions?
State-sponsored attacks. We've seen quite a bit that has happened in the past. The recent ones that happened, taking 23, 25 organizations across the globe, using cloud AI's capability, right? So these are the kind of attacks that constantly happen, and we've been seeing these trying to extract data, trying to extract blueprints, intellectual property, PII information across industry types. So these are the kind of adversaries who've been engaged, leveraging AI in itself to cause attacks, to organization, cause harm. And how do we protect against these is having users educated, controlling your identities within your organizations, because with AI we are introducing a new form of identity within an organization itself, which is agentic identities, which are difficult to control, right? So the nation state sponsored attacks are leveraging these opportunities to turn them rogue and act against organizations, exfiltrate information which may be beneficial for them from a future perspective. So that's a very, very classic example, right?
Yeah, especially when the organizations are looking at the efficiency of agentic roles or agentic AI and saying this is great news for us, but not necessarily embedding the controls. Is that what you're seeing, Tyson?
I do see that, but I also see other forms of threat emerging that are more dependent on the use case. One example being inference AI deployed at the edge for industrial applications or edge applications. It could be image recognition or intelligence analysis, where the model itself can be captured if the device it is residing on, the system, is captured or lost. And the danger there is that it's extracted from memory, and the adversary, in this case, nation state or military or perhaps industrial, has got the opportunity to reverse engineer it very quickly and therefore capture the intellectual property and all the effort that went into creating it in the first place. The other sort of threat is not necessarily adversarial so much as unintended usage, where the questions being asked are important to the person or to the organization, but the conditions of usage in those click through accept terms on an app or other types of application lead you to allow them to do whatever they want with the prompts, to use those to form profiles and or perhaps to glean additional information. So addressing that sort of threat, which is not necessarily adversarial, it's almost like you've been co-opted into exposing that data. If there are solutions, then there are certainly many situations where people would prefer not to expose the prompt information to the person that owns the model or is hosting the model, for instance.
Fair enough. So we are going to be talking about the quantum side of this question, but before we do that, Kristin, in your organization, no doubt you're working with other pillars, other roles to build digital trust. And from your organization's perspective, what might that look like?
So we want, the financial sector as a whole is built on trust. And so we are making sure that our users trust that their information and everything stays with us. So for example, most financial institutions do the same thing that we do at BMO. But if we're using a big tech provider's large language model, we will bring that in-house, and anything extra that's trained on it with BMO data stays contained. So they're not allowed to use the benefit of how its model has progressed for other clients. So that's locked down pretty tight. And that's pretty common across all of the different sectors. Brian, trust is so vital to all of us. One of the things that I have been kind of on a campaign to articulate is we've learned something new, we being society, but recently in a deep lab, we have learned that the large language models, the hallucination component of it is not actually algorithmically driven. What's driven is the data layers that integrate into the large language model. And so what that means is there's been such a focus on why does this model hallucinate? Why do models in general hallucinate? So we've been trying to control for that or test that or understand it. And a lot of energy has gone into algorithmically trying to figure out that solution. But now we've learned it's actually data drift. So we need to kind of shift our attention to the data drift side of the equation, the controls, and that is where the adversaries can really penetrate these large language models, especially since our attention has been on the algorithmic part of it.
Yeah. Very interesting. I have to admit, back 5 years ago, I had the initial GPTs look up my name and try to write a bio for Brian Lenihan, who, by the way, has lots of videos and lots of books and so on online, and it was completely made up. It didn't even come close to who I was, but fast forward 5 years, much more accurate, but even the best LLMs may or may not be in the 90% range. So it's a very interesting time to be around. Subin, when you're talking to your clients, how do you bring that LLM conversation, that question of AI inference to them to engage and increase its priority?
Yeah, it predominantly depends on the use cases that they're engaging in. The most important thing is what they have today and what are the requirements, not use models for something that they don't need to, basically. So usage example, if it is in a security operations center in SOC that they need to use in LLM, how much is it going to impact their mean time to detect and mean time to respond? So those are the kind of conversations that we have. How is it going to impact your KPI metrics? What are the benefits, the cost benefit analysis? Because engaging an AI solution within an organization is very expensive. It has a long run time, and there is subsequent costs. So you need to be aware of your respective use cases and leverage them accordingly. So those are the kind of discussions that we start with when we have these conversations with our customers, Brian.
Tyson, you're a vendor to these organizations, and they're telling you about their resource challenges and priorities and so on. How do you engage them?
It often begins with the model owners themselves and the effort and the value that they've put into creating these models. And often our focus is more on the small model side versus the large LLMs like the chat GTPs. And how do they make these models more private? How do they make them more secure? Or even how do they expose these models to third parties where they wouldn't be able to do that before because they're concerned about the privacy or the security of the prompts, or the model itself being captured somehow. So in this case, what we're looking at doing through the use of some quantum technologies that we'll get to shortly is to provide prompt security and model security as an overlay to the AI, and mitigate a lot of those risks in a very efficient way that otherwise you have to approach through more expensive means, very complex things called guardrails that themselves are subject to some basically challenges with edge cases, and it's a difficult problem, but we think we've got a very elegant solution through these quantum technologies.
So, quantum to some or many is new, and yet we're seeing an organization like BMO who is embracing, the future. And by the way, you got our first 5-star rating there, Kristin, on your last comment. And I encourage anybody who's on our session to chat with us as we'll go along. But what's the feeling, just in terms of a general technology set around quantum?
So we are very proactive with our quantum research, and we have an amazing team that is focused on being prepared for when we believe Advantage will be made available by the hardware coming live. I do believe that will be sometime this calendar year. If not this year, then next year. We will be in that moment right for Advantage. And for audience participants, I'm assuming that if you're joining a quantum call, you know a little bit about Advantage, but just in case, Advantage is just simply a moment when you can be better, smarter, faster at something in a quantum environment than you can in a classical environment. And our approach to quantum is not focused on the day that Advantage arises. Brian, what we're doing differently at BMO is we're focused on how do we productionalize post-Advantage. And so we're working diligently on some secret sauce use cases that when Advantage hits, to be pretty ready for productionalizing that in our business processes quickly after. Quantum's so important. I always say that, to our board and to our leadership teams, that there's really 2 huge promises of quantum. One is that it's going to speed things up. Speed doesn't always necessarily mean getting 0 to 60 faster, but it does mean feasibility. Being able to solve for something we haven't ever been able to solve for before, that's speed. Then the other promise of quantum, and I know that we have a host of experts on the call, but this is a really great way to explain it to executives who may not understand physics, that the second promise of quantum is it's going to give you something unexpected. So 2 + 2 classically is 4. In quantum environment, you have a probability of getting 4 or probability of it being pink. So it gives you something that you wouldn't have necessarily expected in a quantum computer than the classical environment.
Yeah, fantastic. And very excited to see this because if you think back a number of years when quantum companies started identifying quantum advantage or supremacy, it was in a very narrow lane on sometimes problems that really couldn't be put out into the marketplace. They were just very difficult to solve. So now we're actually seeing some progression, whether it's through sensing or it's already starting to see some computing pilots. Subin, we're looking at the security side in the year of quantum security. How do you project out, quantum technologies? And I promise we'll get down to a little bit deeper dive, but to your customers.
Yeah. So the biggest concern that we try educating the customers is around the harvest now, decrypt later problem that most customers need to be aware of. Information is out there. The legacy encryption mechanisms can easily be broken with a quantum system. So that needs to be made aware. So information from a financial sector, from healthcare, these can fall into rogue entities who can use it at a later stage once quantum systems are available. So customers need to be aware of their entire encryption mechanisms that they use within the organization. The inventory, the visibility is important for them. Once they are aware what they're using, then they should take a step, at least in 2026, to start at least planning for a migration, because all of this migration does not happen overnight. It's not a flip a switch and it will happen. So it takes a lot of time, and you need to have preparedness and start now and not wait for the Q day to happen to be ready. At the same time, assess your applications, understand what is your requirements for tomorrow, what are the applications that you will use, and what is on your journey to be transformed in the next few months to years, basically. So those are the kind of conversations that we engage in, Brian.
Okay, great. Tyson, I'm gonna prompt you and ask you this question, but I'm gonna do a little bit of an intro on something else. Farai has asked, just curious what a minimum viable version of PQC readiness looks like at this point. So I just got to ask you to think about that. But for those people who are in attendance, one of the ways that I learned from the very beginning more about quantum technology, the vendors, the conferences, what the technology means in a more common language way was through the Quantum Insider. And so I encourage people to go to that site, free resources to really gain insights into what's happening in the quantum space. And you quickly sort of get up to speed. So again, Tyson, I'm going to come back to that question. What does a minimum viable version of PQC readiness look like at this point in time in 2026?
Sure, I'll address it from a technical perspective as well as sort of a management process perspective. From a technical perspective, the core systems in cybersecurity, they're sort of your baseline, typically involve your identity and access controls, and the VPNs or the encrypted network traffic that you've got connecting into the organization or you use to connect to your branch offices. Cryptography is scattered everywhere throughout an organization. It's embedded in applications. It's in places that we've forgotten about. But those two places, from a technical perspective, are good starting points, good solid starting points, especially if you have to prioritize, because you suddenly find out that Q day is arriving much quicker than you estimated, or the board can no longer tolerate the risk of being caught flat-footed in the event that Q day arrives and you're not ready. From a management perspective, procurement. Putting in terms and conditions related to your vendor's use and deployment of cryptography, cryptographic agility is often the term that's used, and asking vendors as you renew their contracts to make sure that the next upgrade has got post-quantum support built into it, wherever that may be, and beginning the process of eliminating vendors that do not meet that requirement. That is really the most effective way to get your ecosystem evolving and be ready for QA.
Fantastic. Kristin, I'm going to come back to you. So one of the things that we're seeing today is, yes, we talked about trust, and one of the ways that trust is formed is through compliance or standards or regulations. But in the quantum world, that really hasn't evolved very highly yet. Does that sort of force an organization's hands to start creating their own, or are there sufficient momentum to be able to help build that trust?
To build a framework of trust for the cryptography standards or for quantum use cases? I'm sorry, Brian.
Sorry, yeah, just in terms of cryptography standards. So one of the challenges, of course, is whether you have NIST or IEEE or ISO, various organizations who are starting to put together standards, and knowing that the technology is not necessarily in place, is it got the momentum that will suffice on the compliance side?
I do believe that it has momentum. It's been written into several different regulatory policies. So we're going to have to comply. I forget right now what the deadline is. So financial institutions are going to be forced to comply. So we are, because you're forced to, we will. And we will be one of the first in the industry to do so. I just put into this chat a pretty provocative statement that I don't need to necessarily say live, but we will be creating an inventory because that is what the regulators demanded. And if anyone has an ounce of cryptography in their background, they understand that these keys change and modify. And if they don't, number one, you have a problem.
Yes.
And number two, like, how does an inventory serve me in a cryptography perspective? It actually doesn't serve me or my cyber organization at all. So now you're asking us to comply with something that doesn't add any value to the security of my program. And I think that that's a fault of the policy in and of itself. I think everything that is asked of us from a regulatory perspective should strengthen and embolden the security of an institution, and this one does not. But we will comply, and we are already, BMO is already aligning to NIST, and there are some really, really good principles in NIST, and so we're very happy to be aligning to that. And we're aligning to that both on the quantum side and the AI side, by the way. Just wanted to throw that out.
Fantastic. So, Subin, we're seeing the Canadian government start to put its foot down in terms of its own departmental units being compliant by a certain date. Similarly, in the U.S. government, is that government influence being part of this momentum for quantum?
100% yes. I'll start with CISA. The CISA regulations mandates that organizations from a procurement perspective start looking at quantum resistant products, basically. So that's pushed organizations in the US at least to start looking at those. Similarly, here in Canada, I'm seeing there are OSFI regulations. There are slow changes that are happening. That's focusing most of the financial sector, insurance sector to start looking at these as a mandate. And we've started having conversations with many organizations who really want to go in this direction, at least want to understand what's the roadmap, how we can start at least with an assessment, do a discovery, and then adopt a 2 to 3 year strategy on where they can adopt as an industry standard. Say, for example, NIST PQC, it's already out there. So how we can adopt against those? What are the vulnerable algorithms today, and how we can leverage at least a recommendation from NIST PQC to move in that direction.
So, Tyson, if we could dig one level deeper, maybe you can talk a little bit about, why O1 Quantum suggested this topic and the solution that you're looking at on behalf of your clients.
Sure. I actually refer to something Kristin said about post-quantum programs, how there are intended benefits and there are unintended benefits. So in the case of AI inference, one of our specializations at O1 is providing services and open source platforms for what's known as homomorphic encryption, fully homomorphic encryption, which is a post-quantum technology. It's a derivative of the NIST standards based on lattice cryptography. And it allows information that's been encrypted to also be executed as an application. So for instance, an AI model, an expert model, generally, smaller models can be fully encrypted so that the model itself, if you lose control of it, for instance, it's at an edge or it's in a data center and somebody were to copy it, it becomes unintelligible. This is quantum technology. This is an unintended, or at least often an unperceived benefit of a program in quantum technology and having that expertise. The corollary is that the prompts that are sent to an encrypted model are themselves encrypted. So there's complete privacy there. All the processing is done on this information in an encrypted manner. So the questioner, their questions cannot be seen by the AI model or any of the actual organizations hosting it. So there's a lot of benefits to that in terms of how to expose models and how to manage the risk associated with asking questions and partnerships and capabilities. Of course, this goes down to fundamental issues around physical security too, depending on where you're deploying the models. But all of that is a quantum program, and all of that is a benefit that is often not high on the awareness level of organizations. They're more concerned about getting basic matters like key exchange and networks and identity and access controls to a quantum safe position, but they also acquire expertise, or a company like O1 can bring expertise to add these benefits to their most valuable AI assets.
Tyson, I'm going to stay with you. I'm often asked the question. So if we're talking about post-quantum cryptography, whether it's PQC, QKD, one-time pad, like any number of different potential layers or wall fortifications, people ask me, okay, so are you just asking me to layer on the costs? Is it really truly going to be doing something for me? So how do organizations look at a solution like O1 Quantum?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been in cybersecurity for a very long time, and cost is often the number one consideration. You can accept risk, you can choose to mitigate it. So cost is a driving factor. Now, in this case, for many years now, the cyber budgets have become frozen. They're not trying to put more money into it. And in the case of AI inference, already there are significant amounts of security investments taking place. Gartner has said that this is well into the 7 digits for most AI large enterprises employing AI, trying to protect the models, trying to protect the prompts. And in this case, there's an opportunity to, number one, displace some mitigations with something that's entirely effective, which is encryption, versus other things like guardrails, which may not be as effective in protecting the abuse of the models or the capture of them. And similarly, access controls and things like that would prescribe a very limited amount of exposure of the model because of its sensitivity. It's possible that you can operate with more flexibility and greater confidence, and therefore less spending in other more expensive areas of security. Okay. Opening new business cases and new opportunities for usage.
Mm-hmm. Kristin, I personally love to see Canadian financial institutions engaging on the quantum side. It's so exciting for me personally, being a Canadian and monitoring this field for so many years. When you have those conversations internally, is there a sense of excitement? Is there a sense of concern? A little bit of a combination?
We're mostly excited. So we talk about this. We have our CEO has talked about it in our quarterly reports. He is likely to talk about it at our upcoming Investor Day. We are really proud and excited about what we're doing, and I think that that's because there's earned trust that we are deliberate with our approach. There's accountability with our approach. We are using a high-profile big tech vendor with our quantum hardware, so it's a named entity that everyone already trusts. So that's the excitement is there. But I also we are not doing it to have fun or be sexy with it. We are literally working on business value, and so showing that the investment today and how it could pay off in a relatively short period of time. And we're also researching possible disruptions, et cetera, as well with what we're doing. So I'm able to show that value chain, that return on intelligence, if you will, across the spectrum.
Fantastic. So speaking of spectrum, Subin, when you look at the size of organizations, from an organization as large as BMO down to much smaller organizations, what are you seeing happening in terms of that threat maintenance, threat monitoring, preparedness?
Yeah, so it's mostly enterprise and mid-market segments that we are seeing where they're coming across, asking for assistance, getting themselves ready to counter attack or counter such threats that they're seeing in the wild, basically. So from a security operations perspective, we help most of the mid-market segments or different consortiums. Let it be the credit unions, the healthcare sectors. They are the ones who are mostly engaged, and education sectors. They are the ones who are mostly engaged in asking for assistance to counter these kind of threats, right?
So probably not surprised in that, but 99% of all companies around the world are small or medium size. So is there a potential threat there?
Absolutely. We have seen quite a bit of issues in the last 2 years that we have observed. There's been an increase in the overall number of attacks that we've seen in the mid-market segment, and organizations at least taking more than 6 months to recover out of those kind of situations where they need help. And that is where we come in. We work with them, help them recover out of out of the current situation, and then bolster their holistic security. The expense factor always runs in mind, because the after effect of an attack is not understood, because you end up paying more to recover and come out of those attacks rather than if you had invested in advance, basically, right? So we've been seeing an increase in the last 2 years, quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Tyson, I'm going to come back to you and say, as you look at the next year, and we have about 10 minutes left, as you look at the next year, where's O1 Quantum's focus?
We are laser focused on developing the secure AI inference models and the prompt infrastructure. So we're doing this by utilizing open source libraries, including our own. So we're not looking to deploy proprietary solutions, but bringing the managed services around securing these expert AI models with this homomorphic encryption, providing the prompt privacy, the prompt security, where the use cases make sense. And in the case of large AIs, compound AIs, often inside there's one or two experts that may be of particular value and may require this sort of protection, whereas the other ones can be left in clear text. And that decision-making process is something that requires support. So we're in 26 very focused on getting proof of concepts into place with large organizations, both civilian and military, and leveraging our expertise in post-quantum cryptography, where we have existing products that we've deployed successfully in remote access and email. We know how to manage post-quantum cryptography, and therefore this fully homomorphic encryption, it seems like it's a natural extension where we can let our expertise really provide some value in the market.
And so I don't have to tell you how dynamic the AI space, and we're constantly seeing upgrades and changes. And how do you help your client organizations through that kind of maze?
The upgrades and the changes to the AI, yes, it's constantly growing. The models are improving. And when you go through this process of trying to secure an AI model that's been trained, there's an optimization process that has to occur. And to do that, you need automations. If you're retraining your models on a regular basis, or you're using other sorts of input, then you need to have automation so that you can deploy security with as little friction as possible. And that's how we intend to help our customers adopt these technologies is to reduce the friction as they expand their estate in AI, or as they just maintain it with newer, more evolved models.
Okay. So I'm going to ask each one of the speakers to, give me their final thoughts and, what they perceive in terms of what should happen in the next year, and, what securing AI inference against adversarial threats, our topic today, really has meant. Subin, I'm going to start with you. There's probably so much going on within CGI that never comes to the front. So you must have huge resources working on these activities.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a large team spread across Canada who've been helping customers across Canada in the various sectors. So predominantly, it's an everyday request. Before I came into this call, there's a request coming in again from a financial sector where they want to assess their environment for ransomware kind of situations today, basically. So these kind of requests come in on an everyday. My request to everybody is to look at the basic principles, stick to the basic stuff. How do you consolidate, not bring in too many point solutions? Technology is good, but not to have many, which becomes very difficult for the security operations as well as the analysts to look at it and protect your environment. Focus on the emerging technologies. AI is good, but at the same time, whatever your evolving from an application perspective, adopt the principles of having a continuous red teaming exercises. Doing one-off tests is what most organizations work today on, but adopt best practices that will help you protect what you're developing using AI as an example in itself, to ensure that you don't end up losing any of your IPs or information that may be of importance to your organization. So on a daily basis, we receive a lot of requests, and we keep continuing to help customers. But the most important thing of emphasis is stick to your basics.
Okay. So we've had a lot of activity in the chat. And Kristin, I will be coming to you next. Raul asked the question, as a student in quantum computing program, what specific projects should I focus on to make my CV more competitive? I agree with Kristin, just by virtue of being in that program, you've already got a leg up. In May, I'm going to be doing a TED Talk about quantum transitions, about the career opportunities that are just going to be exploding in the quantum space in the next few years. So definitely well positioned. Kristin, your final thoughts.
So I love to share that innovation without empathy is merely efficiency without trust. And so we really, I think, all would do well by approaching both AI and quantum with that in mind. I think the other thing that we did not talk on, so maybe the host will have us back to talk about deep fakes. And what do we do when agents are talking to agents, and my agents are interacting with your agents, Brian or Subin or Tyson, and that's going to be. And how do you decide if it's really my intention of the agent? And so there's a whole world from an adversary perspective that we can dive into with the deep fakes of what's coming. So as far as encouraging people into the field, one of the things that I have found in hiring my quantum team is that I really value giving them the opportunity to work on real data sets. So there's a lot of Ph.D. programs that want to work with us because we're giving them the opportunity to solve an actual business problem, and they're not stuck in that, which is being stuck in the theoretical side of this is a very important part of the equation. So I'm not belittling that at all. But the internship, or I should say, and the internship wherever possible with real data or real business problems and real access to real quantum hardware and not just the simulators is something that would be, raise your hand and sign up for that if I was a student again.
Yeah, fantastic advice. We truly are at an inflection point. I've been involved in the quantum space for at least the last 7 years. We talked about various different inflection points, but we're certainly moving much toward the industrialization or commercialization or productionalization in some ways, and certainly readiness for quantum, and certainly giving people tangible opportunities like the one that you're suggesting is so, so valuable. For Tyson, I'm going to give you the final word for today, and ask you to have any final thoughts.
Thanks, Brian. My final thought to share with the audience is that if you are embarking on a quantum security program, this doesn't have to be all about a cost center, where it's effort to try and replace the cryptography that's in place now. It can also offer business benefits. It can offer new service opportunities through this adjacent or derived technology directly related to quantum, which is homomorphic encryption, and that is securing the value in your models, exposing it in different ways, mitigating risks more efficiently, and think of those opportunities. This isn't just necessarily about a cost. It could be an opportunity to open up new lines of business, create new products, and do that in an assured manner that's compliant and is safe and secure.
Thank you. And, in terms of the agentic AI, one of the big challenges is what's the level of human oversight involved in any one of these processes, whether it is a complete oversight or no oversight at all. Choose your agentic AI term. So really have to be careful monitoring that as we go forward. But also certainly we could have a whole other conversation about the opportunities that come with quantum technologies, whether it's in optimization or in various other life sciences and so on. But I want to thank every one of our speakers today for their insights into the AI inference against adversarial threats. I think we could go on for quite a bit longer. Um, uh, just let everybody know that we'll be sending a follow-up email with some survey questions to get some more insights from you, as well as for O1 Quantum and BMO and CGI. We certainly want to thank the Quantum Insider for hosting this platform today. Again, go to their website, gain new information and insights that you haven't had before. And then finally, I'd also like to thank O1 Quantum for hosting today's session. And once again, Tyson, thank you and your whole team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To all the speakers, thank you very
Thank
much.
you for hosting us.
Thanks very much, everybody. And thank you to all those people in the chat. Hope you enjoyed it.